And as you said, people who absolutely adore their spouses have that feeling. But, we spend a lot of our lives living fairly independently for good parts of our days. And then now we're in the same house all the time, or we're free. And well, what's your expectation of what we're going to do versus what's mine?
Does talking about your money make you cringe? Are you tired of fighting about finances? Do you want to stop sabotaging your financial happiness? Then you are in the right place. Welcome to Breaking Money Silence, a podcast series aimed at helping all of us talk more openly about money. Your host, Kathleen Kingsbury, is a wealth psychology expert who is doing what she does best, speaking about taboo topics. International speaker, author, and founder of KBK Wealth Connection, Kathleen understands money and our relationship with it. Over the past decade, she has empowered thousands of people to break money silence at home and at work. Now, here is Kathleen.
I am here today with Dr. Amy. She is a repeat guest on the Breaking Money Silence podcast, and she happens to be one of our sponsors. So it's so awesome to welcome her back today. Just so you know, Dr. Amy not only helps advisors and clients communicate and work through life transitions, she also is writing a book called Essential Conversations, which is a must-have read around helping people through different life transitions that can sometimes be a little bumpy. And so I don't want to spend all my time talking about all the wonderful things she's up to. I want to hear what she has to say today about the topic of awkward couple retirement conversations, which is a mouthful now that I think about it. Welcome, Dr. Amy, to the podcast, or welcome back, should I say.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. It's a delight to be back with you.
Yeah, we always have fun, even though this topic is awkward money conversation. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to be having fun, but it's good to show everybody that you can break through difficult conversations and, have a little fun with it. So I just want to start by saying, couples in retirement, it's an interesting topic because a lot of couples retire eventually, or one retires and the other follows. And there are so many financial and non-financial conversations that partners should be having leading up to that, but they typically don't. So I'm curious, what do you think are the top couple, 3-4 awkward money conversations that couples should be having? And then the second part of that is, let's get into why they're not having them.
That's great. Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to limit the number of conversations here, KBK, but there's some good ones. And let's start with the financial. The very first one that often people you would think talk about, but don't necessarily, is how much money do we both feel we need to retire? This is one of those areas that sometimes people don't flesh out and they see it differently. So that's one issue. And then let's take the other money part, which is in retirement. How much can we really spend? What is our lifestyle going to be like in retirement? One of the things couples do is they make a lot of assumptions, especially if and when they've been together a long time.
Absolutely. It's
wonderful. Can I go to the non-financial? I paused. Now
You paused and I jumped in and I said, enough. Let me just say something really quickly, and then we'll add the other two. So I can just think of a friend of mine one time saying they met with a financial planner. They were thinking about hiring them. They were in their 40s, and the gentleman said something like, what's your vision for retirement? And one person said that they wanted to be in a VW bus and travel around the country. And the other person's like, I don't want to do that at all. So I think that's what you're talking about in terms of what that might look like in the finances. But what are the other two that we're going to talk about today? Because I know there's many more we could talk about.
Actually, you just named one of them, which is how are we going to spend our time, right? Yeah. What's your sort of vision? But the other part of that is how much time do we spend together versus independently? This is a huge issue for couples in retirement because really when you think what retirement does is it upsets the equilibrium that you've had for decades. And not, we see retirement as this wonderful thing we want to get to, and it can be, but often couples get into retirement and it's like, well, I kind of thought I was going to go off and do these things with my friends and you think we're going to do everything together. That can be an issue. And then the other one is who does what? Who does what? So now this especially comes up if one retires before the other. So if somebody retires first, sometimes the spouse that's still working thinks that the person who's retired is going to pick up all the household chores. And the one who's retired says, I didn't retire to suddenly do everything in our relationship. I wanted to retire. So you can hear it's always about equilibrium and throwing that off. And how do you prevent that? And how do you get back on track?
Now, I'm thinking every time you mention one of these issues, I go, oh, I know a couple like that. Oh, I know a couple like that. And, I think many of us who recently, went through the pandemic and were during the lockdown, were all of a sudden together with our significant others for a long period of time. We're like, ooh, this might be something we want to talk about. I just felt like I love my husband to death, but I felt like by noon, there was kind of a shadow at my office. Like a little toddler saying, play with me, play with me. So
And
we
that's what people
definitely,
find, right?
definitely
We
that
could
is a
spend 2
conversation to be
hours.
had.
Yeah. We could do a 2-hour podcast on this one.
Right. So why do you think couples don't talk about this? Because they're kind of obvious things that you should be talking about, but there's definitely a money silence around it.
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One is I think for lots of people, they truly don't think about this. They're not projecting themselves into the future and thinking about how their lives are going to change in these ways. Unfortunately, so much of retirement planning has been hijacked by financial planning, which of course needs to be done. But the other part is you have to do life planning. And people don't know what they don't know is one reason. The other reason is it's kind of like, well, we'll just get there and work it out. A lot of people have this sort of we'll just work it out thing. And then the third thing is people avoid things that are awkward or what I call essential conversations. They avoid them because they're afraid of potential conflict or they may not be able to work it out. So I think it's usually one of those reasons.
Right, right. Well, and I think, often you're working so hard to get to retirement for some
Yes.
that it's easy to
Yeah.
think it's way, way far away. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden it really isn't.
But you
So,
had an experience that many people had, which was the pandemic was like a little mini opportunity to experience what would retirement be like with my spouse when oh my, we're here together all the time. And as you said, people who absolutely adore their spouses have that feeling. But we spend a lot of our lives living fairly independently for good parts of our days. And then now we're in the same house all the time or we're free. And well, what's your expectation of what we're going to do versus what's mine?
yes, no, absolutely. So, what are some of your thoughts about how to kind of start these conversations and how to get the ball rolling around them?
I am a big believer. I hope that everybody listening on this podcast will walk away inspired by you and me to go have essential conversations or awkward conversations about everything they've been avoiding having. So let's see if we can do that
That's a
together.
lofty goal, Dr. Amy, but I
I
love
know.
it.
Well, if you're going to go big. That's my thing. So I always say, think about how you want to start the conversation with someone and what do you want the outcome to be? Think about that before you get into it. Because a lot of times we approach people and kind of fire things at them that create defensiveness. So by approaching someone and talking about sort of your vision of this conversation, what you hope the outcome is, I've been thinking about our retirement. And by the way, you can do this when you're in retirement. You haven't missed the boat. You can still do it. And, you and I have spent lots of time apart during our lives. And then, we come together and we really enjoy that. But it's going to be very different in the future because we won't have work. So I'm wondering if you think about that, what are you thinking about how much time we'll spend together or independently? And obviously this will change as we get into it, but it's a great thing for us to talk about now because I think I've talked to a lot of people. I always love I've talked to all my friends who've been through this and this often becomes an issue. And I think if you and I start talking about it, we might prevent it ever being an issue between us. So pull out other people's stories, share what you want the outcome to be, which is key. Start with emotion. I always say start with emotion, not facts. So the emotion part could be something like, I so love the time we spend together. And part of what makes that so great for me is the time that I'm away from you, that I can bring something back to that time we spend together. Right.
I
So
have to tell you, I call that a shit sandwich, Amy.
I'm big on them.
You start with something really great, you throw in the middle stuff, and you end with something great. Anyway, I love that. That's a great approach, actually. That's
Right?
why
Yeah,
we
well,
can
it
call
works
it.
great because
Yeah.
yeah, you call it every but, I say if you share what your intention is, like, I want us to make sure we don't have the struggles that I've seen other couples get into in retirement. That could be what you say. And I've been thinking about this. I thought, wow, we've never talked about it. It'd be great to talk about. So something simple, lots of people are married to people who don't want to have conversations. So if you're the starter of the conversation, sometimes it helps if you have what's the outcome that'll be great for the other person. And boy, avoiding conflict always seems great to couples.
Yes. Well, and I think for the person, the other thing that I would throw in there, and I want your reaction on this, is if you've been thinking about this a lot and then you make an invitation to have one of these essential conversations, it's really important to then allow the other person some time to process,
Oh,
which,
I'm so glad you said this. I'm
I am
so
not
glad you
saying
said
I
this.
always do that in my own relationship, but I highly recommend other people do.
No, I'm terrible at this, but I recommend it all the time because we have to realize a couple of things. At just what you said, and I say this about caregiving conversations too, that you have to recognize you've given it all this thought, and now this person is being hit like, and
Yeah.
like what, and everybody processes differently. So we have to respect. My partner processes much more slowly than I do. And
Mhm.
so I have to respect that I have to approach these things, gently and allow time for thinking, just what you said. And
Yep.
maybe just say, I'm wondering if we could talk about this over dinner next week or whatever. You might have to allow people actually the thinking time for several days.
Yes, yes. No, I think that's a really great idea. And I've been married so long that my husband actually will say, I need time to process. I'm like, well, that's direct and helpful. So
Yes.
I think, and so if somebody is listening today and, maybe they don't want to start the conversation, but their partner does, it's okay to ask for some time to give it some
Yes, it
thought. I mean,
is.
these are big questions. Retirement is
Yes.
a long period of time, hopefully. And both the financial and non-financial, I think, are really important.
But you said something key there, Kathleen. Can I pick up on that? Which is if you're the person who needs the time, what will help the person who wants to do it now is if you say, I need some time to think about it, but I'll get back to you in a week, no longer than a week. I'll get back to you whenever, because they'll relax if they know you're going to come back. What the person who's pursuing the conversation fears is that you're just stonewalling them and you're never going to come back and talk to them. So, and then if you come back within the week, you start to build up the trust that, hey, when we have
Yeah.
big conversations, you really do need to go process, but you'll come back and talk to me ultimately.
That is an awesome point. I think that's why you help people with essential conversations. That makes sense. So we are going to take a very quick break. We are with Dr. Amy, and we are talking about awkward couple retirement conversations. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, this is Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, and I just wanted to tell you about a new exciting program. It's for business owners. Because many business owners, we spend so much time delivering our products and services, but we fail to set up a system to actually make sure we get paid every month. You deserve to get paid every month. If you broke money silence and you ask for your fee, then it's time to figure out how to put financial policies and procedures in place in your business so you can continue to earn what you are worth. So I have developed a course called It's Time to Get Paid. It takes you through how to contract, how to set up a payment policy, and ultimately how to collect accounts that are past due. So I think you should check it out. It's only $27. It's a great investment for your firm. And if you are new to business or struggling in getting paid what you are worth, then it is time to check out It's Time to Get Paid. Go to courses.breakingmoneysilence.com and check out the details. I am here with Dr. Amy. She is from Life Transitions of Dr. Amy, and we are talking about awkward couple retirement conversations, both financial and I would say non-financial or life conversations. So I have a follow-up question from earlier when we introduced this topic. You talked a little bit about financial planning conversations versus life planning conversations. So I want to circle back and have you just define the difference between those two,
Mhm.
and then let's think about who can help you with those different pieces of the
Mhm.
puzzle if you do indeed
That's great. I
decide to
love it.
enlist some help.
Well, Kathleen, I really got into thinking about this because I work a lot with advisors. And so, with advisors, they're focused, of course, on the financial advisors. They're focused on the financial, which is their sweet spot.
Hmm.
But where their clients, I say every life transition has four implications: practical, emotional, family, and financial. So the practical, emotional, family are the non financial. And then there's the financial aspect. And the financial and non financial in our lives go hand in hand. So some of my work with advisors is to go to where their clients are, a practical, emotional family, and be able to really understand them before segueing back to connecting it to the financial. So it's always these are not standalone issues, but oftentimes especially with retirement, all you have to do is flip on the TV and there are endless financial planning
Yes.
commercials for retirement, endless. You don't see life planning conversations being played out that way. And so historically, people have missed that side of it. So
Hmm.
there are advisors, obviously, that can help people on the financial side, but there are also coaches that can help people on the non financial side. Some people, I've referred people to therapists because they've gotten near retirement and they realize they have no idea what they want in their life for this next stage. And they're very
Sure.
stressed about that. So everywhere from a coach to a therapist to, I know maybe you can throw something else in there that I'm
Well,
not
some
thinking
people
of
will actually
professionally.
go to their spiritual leaders
Oh, yes. Yeah.
is
And,
another
and
aspect.
yeah, and our friends are great too to talk about this with. Often we're kind of going through stages with a cohort,
Yeah.
but you want to make sure that your friends are actually good advisors on these things, not the ones who are sabotaging you in some way unconsciously because they haven't figured it out. So,
Right, right.
so I see the
Something.
non-financial and financial as hand in hand. And I encourage people to think practical, emotional, family, financial. Are you thinking about all those implications of retirement as you go into it?
Well, it's interesting because I do some work with financial planners, and I had someone refer a client to me who they were approaching retirement. And he, out of the two, was not really understanding, or it wasn't clicking for him that he couldn't be as generous as he's always been in his
Mm,
life, or he wasn't going to, be able to live the lifestyle he
right.
wanted to live in retirement. And so through the coaching, he was able to quickly see, oh, I wasn't thinking about it in those terms, and looked at his money mindset and was able to then, we brought in his partner. They were able to have a conversation. And what was interesting is she worried about it all along, but never gave voice to it. So it was really very important that they got on the same page. And while they're going to continue to work with their financial planner, and I'm here if, they need me, it really was something that, a lot of times people think this is scary, deep work, and it's going to,
Right.
be really in depth. And, within a matter of 5 or 6 appointments, they were able to really just realign and start to save more effectively for retirement. And also he started to appreciate that, even though she was quiet, she was a little concerned about his over gifting, which is actually sounds like a lovely quality in a
Yeah,
partner. But
right. Especially
so,
if it's to you, right?
right, right.
Especially if it's to your
Yeah,
to your partner.
exactly. Exactly. And I think, the reason I offer that is I think there's other places that you can go in addition to coaching. But, again, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed thinking this is the big, huge thing.
Right.
And often it's a series of conversations with someone who's objective, or an
Yes.
advisor out there who needs some training in this area and can work with you, that's objective and has the skill set, that it doesn't have to be so huge and awkward and daunting.
Absolutely not. And I love that you say that because sometimes we do approach these conversations too, and our thoughts about them, they get scary when they're stuck in our head by ourselves. And
Yes.
when we get awareness about the benefits and we have an approach to think it through. And I am such a supporter of just having an objective person help us think things through. It makes all the difference in the world, and coaching is beautiful for that.
Yeah,
And I
no,
know you're a fabulous coach, so I
why,
know
thank
that.
you. Say
Yeah.
more. I love compliments.
Well, it's that whole thing of insight, right? You have a great way of of seeing things, giving insight, but framing it in a way that the person can hear it based on who they are.
Well,
I
and I
always say
think what
speaking into someone's listening, right? You speak well into other people's listening.
Oh, I love that. So, one of the things I think that we both agree on, and that I would encourage people out there to consider, is the idea of during this pre retirement, or if you're already in retirement, like you said, it's not too late to develop somewhat of a team of support around you. So, it's
Yeah.
pulling on different pieces of the puzzle to help you. And I don't think there's any sometimes people feel awkward, like I have all these people helping me. I actually think it's a sign of strength when you're able to
Me too.
say, "Oh, I need a team," because we don't do any of this stuff well alone, and pulling on different resources is important. So, I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit more about some of the training you do around these types of conversations with advisors, just to make sure people understand that who are
With the
listening in.
advisors.
With the
With the
advisors for sure.
advisors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I use, I always joke that, everything I do, I try to simplify because the world is so complex. If we're going to actually do something, it needs to be pretty simple because most of us are overwhelmed by things in our lives. So I work with advisors a lot through a program called Trusted Advisor of Choice that helps them understand. I teach a process for going to where their clients are, hearing them, expressing empathy, which I say is really just saying, "Hey, Kathleen, I get you. I
Mhm.
get you as a person." And then segueing back to make the financial conversation relevant. And I teach through that program very simple ways to use that process in all sorts of conversations. And, a lot of us just need, I love what you said about help. A lot of what I do is just as an outsider, be able to help them think about how it feels to their client and to, again, say it in a way that their clients feel like, wow, you really get me. One of the things I find with all of us is we may really understand what somebody is going through,
Mhm.
but we don't always do a great job of conveying that. So the person doesn't know that they're understood. So a lot of times I think we just need to say more that says, "I really understand you. And here's how I can be helpful."
And what's interesting about that is as you're talking about how you train advisors, it's such a transferable skill because I know you also work with clients. All of us need help with
Yeah.
communication, even so-called communication experts. It's
Right.
we teach
Like
what we
us.
need to know sometimes. And
Exactly.
so, I could see if you're working with clients, and I know you do a little bit of that.
Yep.
I think it's
I do.
okay. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do with clients as
And I'm
well.
I'm actually reigniting. This isn't out yet, but stay tuned, folks. To have I to train facilitators again to guide people through these kind of essential conversations,
Ooh.
because I believe that some people can do it on their own. Others just need a guide by the side, a coach who can say, "Yeah, yeah, here, go do it this way." So we're going to have that level too. But then facilitators who can actually sit with you and your family virtually, or
Yep.
you and your spouse, and just take you through a process that makes it safe and easy to get to where people want to go. The goal for me in conversation is always that it's an effective conversation, but it's harmonious and that relationships are preserved or enhanced through conversation. So that's how we approach it. So that's what I do when I work with folks is say, okay, yes, you need to get to a solution, but you don't want to get to solutions where you alienate everybody in your life. That isn't the goal, right? So
Right.
it's coming. So this requires a different approach where you're thinking, how do I approach this so that the relationships are at least as good or stronger at the end of this, and we get to solution that we can both live with. So
We need more of that in this world. So, time goes very, very quickly, especially you and
I
I are
know.
highly verbal and love to communicate, and we always have fun doing it. So, hopefully, our listeners
Yeah.
have taken away some things. But if you had to say, here's one piece of advice I want to give people around the topic of couples and retirements and essential conversations, what would it be?
I would think the main thing is not to avoid them. It's normal to feel uncomfortable when you're approaching these kind of subjects. So don't let the discomfort stop you from actually talking about it, and think about it ahead of time. What's the thing you want to accomplish, and how can the person you're talking to embrace that easily by talking to them about what matters to them in this too. So you're seeing it from their perspective as well as yours.
I love that because it's a simple structure that can be really helpful for someone in preparing and starting the conversation. So I know people are going to want to find out more about you if they don't know about you already. And also, stay tuned for this new book. So tell us what's the best place to connect.
Well, they can get on my website, which is dramy.life instead of .com. And there is a contact me part of that. And please feel free to reach out if you want to connect with me. I'd be happy to do that.
And I know she would, because it all started with one little connection way back when, Dr. Amy, and we hit it off.
Yes, it's true.
So thank you so much for breaking money silence with me today.
Loved it. Thank you, KBK.
So for anybody listening out there, if you liked this show or the other shows, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast app. It just helps listeners find out how to find us and how to break money silence. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Money Silence, hosted by Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, a wealth psychology expert, author, and founder of KBK Wealth Connection. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app and leave a review. Also, share this episode with your friends and family. It is a great way to get the conversation started. For more money talk tips and information, or to hire Kathleen to speak at your next event, go to www.breakingmoneysilence.com.